go slow. Like, you don't have to get married in your 20s. You don't have to get married to the first person you meet. And you certainly don't have to get married in tech school. And it can be challenging. It can be very lonely, and it can be very scary when you're first joining the military, but you don't have to marry the stripper. And that's working right off of the whatever army post that you're stationed at.
Welcome to the Military Money Manual podcast, where every episode is all about achieving financial independence in the military faster than before. We believe personal finance shouldn't be boring or intimidating. Building wealth can be simple, and financial freedom is the ultimate financial goal. Now, here's your hosts, Spencer and Jamie.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Military Money Manual podcast. I'm Spencer from militarymoneymanual.com, and the next voice you'll hear will be Jamie. Hey, Jamie.
Hey.
Today on the podcast, we're talking about New York Times bestselling author Ramit Sethi. He's also got a special on Netflix, and he posts these Ramit's money rules. It's 10 rules that he follows for his money. So we're just going to go through it real quick and make a couple comments on it. And yeah, see what you think. Let us know. Instagram at Military Money Manual or email podcast at militarymoneymanual.com. Okay, Jamie. So number one on Ramit's money rules, always have 1 year of emergency fund cash. What do you think?
I think that might be a little bit much and more than we typically recommend. However, think about how much less stress you could have with money if you have 1 year's of expenses covered. You don't have to worry about an emergency with your car or your house, or one of your spouses lose their job. It's just covered for a year. So while you might be losing some on your investment portfolio, you stand to potentially gain a lot for your happiness or your stress and quality of life. 12 months, maybe a little bit excessive, but there's some benefits there, I could say.
Yeah, I would say if you're just getting started, it's too lofty of a goal. You're going to be ignoring building the habit of investing in your Roth IRA or investing in your Roth TSP. So 1 year of emergency fund cash, I think, is great if you're a little bit more established in your financial life. But if you're just getting started, usually in the military, $1,000 to get started, then, move on to some other goals and come back and maybe pump it up to 3 months, whatever helps you sleep well at night. But I would say that initially 1 year is probably a little excessive for an emergency fund. Even Dave Ramsey in his baby steps, I think, what does he recommend? 3 to 6 months?
3 to 6, yeah. And I think that's a great point, because if you're newer, it could take you forever to reach up to a year's worth. So definitely don't want to make people feel like they're behind because they can't get to 1 year.
Yeah, when it comes to investing or to money management, you don't want to bear too much risk and you don't want to bear too little risk. And I think right now interest rates are great, right? Like, you can have a high yield savings account. You can have a CD locked in at 4.5%, 5%, sometimes they're even 5.5%. And so that's great to have your cash in there, but cash does devalue over time. So I think if you're not building that habit of investing in the stock market, of investing in your TSP, I think there's a real risk there. And a year of emergency fund cash, I could definitely see if you're approaching military retirement, a year of cash would be, or separation, a year of your expenses in your emergency fund in cash would be an awesome thing to have. And in fact, if you're approaching financial independence or you are financially independent, 2 years of cash is even better, because then you don't have to worry about a stock market crash that lasts for a year, 18 months, 24 months, or even longer, because you know that you have the cash there to tap and you won't have to sell assets when they're down.
And in his defense, on his website, I'llTeachYouToBeRich.com, he says, hey, if this seems extreme to you, then adjust it. You can make it whatever you want. Make it your rule to live by, not mine. So if you think it should be 6 months of emergency funds, then do 6 months. So he gives the flexibility there. 12 months as the default might be a little longer than either of us would recommend for the average military family.
Yeah. And again, these are his money rules, right? But I'm going to judge him. I'm going to have some opinions on him. But absolutely, right? Like, he's not saying that you should go do this. He's saying this is what he does. And I totally get where he's coming from. High income, high net worth, having a year of emergency fund and cash. I bet he sleeps great at night knowing that he's got that buffer. Okay. Number 2, save 10% and invest 20% of your gross annual income.
I think this is a great starting point for a lot of people. It's maybe too much of a one size fits all. If someone's in a lot of debt still, for example, then I probably wouldn't recommend them putting 30% of their income towards their future until they've gotten rid of their past mistakes or their past spending. However, once they have their emergency fund, let's say that you're out of debt, saving 10% for whatever's coming up, plus investing 20% is great. And I also like that he distinguishes between gross annual income and net income because it does affect your overall plan. And a lot of people don't address the difference between gross and net. For someone in the military like me in a high BH location, there's a large difference between my gross pay and my net pay right now, especially when you look at my net pay doesn't include any of my on-base housing costs. So gross income means I'm investing more, which I like as well.
Yep, I agree. Save 10%. I think that's good. Like you're setting that money aside. I would say though that if you've got your savings accounts topped up, your emergency fund is topped up, then you don't really need to set more savings aside. I would just roll that into investments. That's investing 30% a year. Man, you are well on your way to financial independence if you can be investing 30% a year. So, and yeah, like you said, looking at the gross versus the net, I tend, especially in the military, because your pay is so low tax, it doesn't make so much of a difference, but it does make a difference, especially over long periods of times.
And the other thing I want to point out on this one is saving 10% is a decent goal, but what I would probably dig into more as I worked with someone or a couple more one-on-one is 10% may just be a benchmark, but you really want to identify what are those costs coming up that you want to save for, and not just necessarily save 10%, but save towards a goal. So if you want to spend $2,400 on vacation in 12 months, then you know exactly how much you need to save. That may or may not make sense to be anywhere close to 10%. It's a good framework, though, in the sense of you don't want to be spending so much that you can't save 10%, or if you're saving up for so many future expenses that you're taking away from current you, like you're struggling with groceries, or it's stressful to fill up with gas, but your vacation 3 years from now is fully funded, then your balance might be a little bit off. So I can see it from that angle as well. Okay, number 3. Be ready to pay in full for large expenses like weddings, dream honeymoon, house, etc. before spending.
Wow. Must be nice to be rich, Ramit. No, but like these are his rules, right? I think that's an excellent rule if you've got the income, if you've got the savings already. I know that when I got married, I was not in a position to pay for that in full. And thankfully, my wife's father, my father-in-law, stepped in and paid for the wedding. So that was awesome. Thank you very much. Dream honeymoon. I don't even think we had a honeymoon, really. I was in pilot training. I didn't have a lot of free time. And then house, I think there he's talking more about like maybe like a 10% or 20% down payment saved up in cash. Yeah. All awesome goals. And I think that especially the 20% down payment on a house. I know we have access to the VA loan, and that does give us, no down payment options, but you're really backing yourself into a corner. News alert, housing prices don't always go up. And who do we have? Alf. We had Alf, Brian O'Neill, who's a certified financial planner on one of our podcasts. And he talked about when he bought a house in Las Vegas, and it basically got cut in half, the value of it. And he had to sell and take a huge 6-figure loss on it when they were moving. And if you're no money down on a house, that means you have no equity in it. Any kind of price movement in there, if you're forced to sell because of a PCS or for whatever reason or deployment, that's not a position you want to be in where you have to bring cash, you have to bring money to the table to get a house sold. So I think it's a great rule, especially if it's a expense that you can project out. So if you know that you're getting married, start saving. If you know that you want to go on a honeymoon, start saving. And I think the super long-term one is, hey, the day you have a kid, start saving for college expenses, because you've got this 18-year runway to sock money away, and any money that you put in day one basically has almost 3 7-year periods to compound. That's 7% return, rule of 72, all that. But you've got this opportunity that any money that you put in when a kid is very young might have an opportunity to double 3 times by the time they're in college.
So I'm going to take a little bit more of an aggressive stance on this and say that this one is very important and should be followed, in my opinion. Paying cash for what you have, and if you don't have cash for it, then you don't spend it. So if you want to get married because you need a courthouse wedding so your fiance can move with you for your first duty station, then you do a courthouse wedding and you get cake from the grocery store. And when you have money, you celebrate a wedding. If you don't have money, you should not be taking out a credit card or a personal loan to pay for your wedding. You just don't need that fancy of a wedding if you don't have the money. Now, I will say I have a really good friend from high school who spent more on her photographer than my wife and I spent on our entire wedding. And her pictures are way better than ours. But no one really remembers the actual wedding or what food we had or what kind of alcohol is available at your wedding. Like, it doesn't really matter. People remember the event and they remember the fun. But especially for you and your spouse, please do not go into debt for a wedding. Please do not go into debt for your honeymoon. Save what you can, put it on your registry, ask for help from your family or whatever. But a lot of people have to pay cash for their wedding or their honeymoon, which means they do something simple. We were broke. We were in debt. We paid for our stuff. And then we went to our honeymoon was in the Smoky Mountains, Gatlinburg, Tennessee, right away. And then, in fact, we got stuck because of a snowstorm, which doesn't happen in South Carolina much at all. We got stuck on the way to our honeymoon because the roads were too snowy. So stuff happens. It doesn't matter. You enjoy the memories anyway. Don't take out a loan for your honeymoon. Just do something simple, save up for it. And then maybe year 1, 2, 3, 5-year anniversary can be something amazing. Don't postpone it forever, but don't take out debt for it. I think you'll live to regret that potentially.
Like we talked about in the habits of great marriages, right? A lot of marital satisfaction came from having little or no debt. So don't go into debt straight away just to have a fancy wedding. Like Jamie said, nobody really cares. They just want the people to be there. And our cake was from Sam's Club and it was delicious. And I would probably still get a Sam's Club cake today.
I have no idea where ours is from. All right, number 4, Spencer. I think you'll like this one. So I'll read it and then I'll tee it off to you. Never question spending money on books, appetizers, health, or donating to a friend's charity fundraiser. And he says, if you love gardening, then maybe your rule looks like this. Never question spending money on gardening supplies, flowers, sunblock, and manicures. So I like the tailoring to it, but I think you'll like the original a little bit better based on what I know about you.
Yeah, I actually have nothing to say about this rule. I think it's perfectly written. Books, yep, love it. I mean, if you pay, Kindle books are sometimes like $9. I think mine's probably listed for somewhere around that. Even if it's, a brand new release from like a top name, Oprah level author, $20, $25 for a Kindle version or even a paperback sometimes. If you get one good idea or you make one change in your life or you have developed one habit from reading a book that you paid $20 for, it is worth the price of admission. So absolutely, spend away on books. This is actually a habit that I've tried to build where if there's a book recommended to me by a friend or recommended on a podcast by a person I trust and who has had good recommendations in the past, I just go into Amazon and I buy the Kindle and I throw it in my library. And so that means I now have, dozens of books I need to start reading in my Kindle. But the other option for that is using the Libby app. I'll log in there and see if it's in the DoD library or in any of the other libraries I've picked up during all my PCSs. But yeah, if it's in there and I can grab it, I'll throw it on my Kindle and then make sure I start reading. But yeah, books, appetizers, yum. Health, yeah. You get one body, you get one life. And, people can waste money on health. Like those green smoothies are probably not doing anything for you. But donating to a friend's charity fundraiser, love that. I haven't been invited to one yet, Jamie. So if you want to throw a gala ball, please, to support your charity of choice, I would love that. Maybe we need to have a military money manual gala ball. That would be pretty cool.
What I think of this is, well, one, like appetizers, that one I don't know if I can get on board with because depending on where you are, it could be a negative health buy. So I just want to throw that out there that eating more food doesn't necessarily equate to happiness, but maybe if you're picturing from a table of friends and you're like, hey, let's just get 2 appetizers for the table on my check. That I think is a great investment of, let's just do it. Then it's not awkward. We're not trying to split a thing of potato skins at TGI Fridays 9 ways.
I would go TDY towards the end of my career. And this is, hashtag officer life. And we would go out to eat with the crew, appetizers, first round of drinks, like, come on, if you're an 03 and 04 out there and you're listening to this podcast and you get to take the troops out for a dinner or something, just get the first round of drinks, get the appetizers. They can get their main course. You don't have to go crazy with this, but it means a lot when the people that you're leading know that like you're just looking out for their basic needs, which are pretty much, like you said, potato skins from TGI Fridays and alcohol.
What was it a couple weeks ago you mentioned Chili's? I probably should have done. What is Chili's? What is an appetizer at Chili's?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Chips and salsa.
Yeah, chips and salsa, the queso.
They have a fake bloomin' onion.
Well, it's like
Outback like bloomin' onion.
Yes. I was thinking of the Dollaritas, which is like this. I somehow missed that. Like I have a gaping hole in my American cultural knowledge that I didn't know about the Dollarita. All right. Well, anything else to add there? Yeah.
So donating to a friend's charity fundraiser. My friends aren't that fancy, I don't think. But what I do love doing is there was one a couple months ago where one of our friends that we were stationed with 2 assignments ago, their kids' school was doing like a run fundraiser booster-thon kind of thing. And I was just like, here's $20 to your kids' fundraiser for your school. You know, other kids are raising money for their baseball team or their band or field trip or whatever. Just like toss them 10, 15, $20. It's going to make that kid's day. And if you're listening to this podcast, either now or in a couple years from now, you won't even notice that you got rid of $20.
Yeah. Another one you could throw in here is just like I don't personally do this, but you could just be like, whatever the highest amount on the little screen when they turn around to me, I just hit it. Like, sure, it's going to like chip away slowly at my net worth.
No,
can't do it. But
can't do it.
If it's absurd, I'm not doing like a 30% tip for a coffee, right? But 25%, it's like, all right, whatever, I'll give you $1. So
I don't know that I should be tipping you to like hand me the muffin out of the display case at Starbucks.
We need to have a whole podcast on tipping, and there's got to be an organization out there. If somebody knows about this, please email it to me, podcast@militarymoneymanual.com. There has to be a organization out there that is dedicated to eradicating tipping in the United States, because it is so nice in every other country in the world that doesn't have to deal with tipping.
The other day, I got a Celsius from the snack bar at the hotel, and she was like, it's just going to ask you one question and then you can swipe your card. I'm like, I know what this question is and I know what my answer is. I'm not tipping you because you scanned the drink out of the cooler. I'm sorry. I cannot do it. Okay, let's move on. They're going to all hate me now.
Number 5, business class on flights over 4 hours. Well, that's interesting, Jamie, because that's a military money manual corporate policy. So.
I think that you're going to sound like a snob, Spencer. So let me just take this one so the audience doesn't hate you too much of like hashtag first world problems here. I will say I just came back from a TDY and I flew on American Airlines direct from Dallas to Honolulu over this past weekend. And when I looked in the app, it had a 7.5-hour flight and it offered $170 for premium economy, which in the Boeing 787, premium economy is basically first class in any other kind of domestic flight. So I did it, $170. It was a great purchase for the long flight, and it had a footrest and it leaned way back. They gave me a pillow and a blanket, and no one else, everyone walking through was like, oh, they get pillows and blankets. And I hear all these people making comments about it. And it was great. Well worth $170. On the way from Honolulu to LA, on the way out to my TDY, it was almost $600 for a 5-hour flight in non-lie flat business class. I did not take that one. I did not think that was worth it. So I'm not all in on this one. It is amazing when you do, but a lot of our listeners are not going to be able to experience business class or lie flat. So I just want to give them the grace that your day will come. If that's a priority that you want to have one day, it's okay if you're not there yet.
I think that's why travel hacking is so awesome, is because you get to experience those first and business class flights over 4 hours. And you don't have to pay full boat for them. So recently I got to fly Emirates first class, and I got to take 2 showers on 2 different flights.
That's just excessive. There's no reason you needed to share that.
Exactly. And no, I just wanted to share because it wasn't worth it. I decided that first class on Emirates wasn't worth it. Business class was. So, but now I know. And that's what travel hacking allows you to do is have those luxury experiences that you're like, oh, wow, that must be amazing. And it was pretty cool, but like life-changing? Nah, like, friendships are life-changing. The bloomin' onion's life-changing, but Emirates first class, not life-changing.
Okay, number 6, buy the best and keep it as long as possible. This is one I struggle with. In my head, it makes sense, but sometimes it's more attractive to just buy from Walmart instead.
Now, granted, this was not my attitude very early in my financial independence journey. I would do a lot of comparison shopping. I would try to get the best deal. I would use coupon websites and such. But at a certain point, you realize that you either buy it nice or you buy it twice. And so you can actually save money.
You should trademark that.
I actually stole it from somebody else. So
okay.
But yeah, it's one of those things. And there's this great Reddit called Buy It for Life. And they have products on there that last a long time. Basically, it's like Patagonia, Danner boots, which I think they make military boots as well. But like, for instance, there is a pair of boots by R.M. Williams that I have purchased, and they are incredible. They are amazing. And I could foresee myself wearing them for 10 years. And in fact, my father-in-law, I think he's had his pair for 15 or 20 years. So that right there is like, yeah, when you buy a quality product and it looks good and it feels good and you use it for a long period of time, that's way cheaper and you get way more value, way more quality out of it than just buying whatever is at the shoe mart.
Yeah, I think the subjectivity here, though, is what gets me tripped up a little bit. So let's say buy the best means an iPhone 15 Pro that costs someone $1,400 and they keep it for a year or maybe two. Like, do you really want to rent an iPhone for $700 a year? Is that really worth it to you? So I think the term the best might be a little subjective to the average American. If you focus it to the quality products, like a better set of headphones, or there used to be this store called Five Below. Have you ever shopped at one of those? It was near us in New Jersey.
Is it like a dollar store, but like $5 and below?
Yeah. And it's not even all $5 and below. It's like the dollar store. You can't trust anything nowadays. So they would have iPhone chargers or chargers there, and you could get a pack or a bundle for $5. It's like, oh, this is great. I'll buy two of them for $5. And then, a week later, they're done. Instead of just going to the Apple store and buying the actual charger that will last hopefully at least a year or if not more. So just be careful with what you actually are getting influenced on being the best.
Yeah. I usually just buy like the Anchor ones on Amazon, get the 2-pack, and it's like twice as expensive as like, the weird Chinese brand ones, but my phone's not going to melt. So there you go.
Share what you do with Amazon reviews and how you use that to just buy and make a quick decision.
Oh, yeah. So there's two things. One is Wirecutter. The one way I implement this rule of buy the best and keep it is Wirecutter. So like it's by the New York Times and they've bought everything and they'll have like a recommended product and I'll just go there. And if they're like, this is the pillow that you need, I'm like, okay, cool. I'll trust that you've done all the research. I won't do any more research on it. And I would say it's probably 9 times out of 10 that they get it right. And at least it solves my problem to the point where I don't go look for another product, which is almost always my problem. And then on Amazon, if I'm looking to buy a product, I'll just search for the product, sort it by, most reviews or best reviewed or whatever. And if there's a product that has, 10,000 reviews, it's not sponsored, right? And it's like 4.5 stars. And it's, within the same magnitude as like most of the other products. So if it's a $20 product, maybe it's like $30 or even $40, but it's not like $400. Then I'll just buy it. Like, I'm not going to read the reviews. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, and if I'm wrong and I bought the wrong thing, okay, then I'll just go buy the next thing, right? It's not worth my time to sit there and like read all these reviews, like watch the videos that people post. I'm like, who is posting? Like, how much time do you have on your hands?
People get paid for that now. It's like a part-time job.
Yeah.
Just a quick note from one of our sponsors, and we'll be right back to the show. Hey, Spencer, I've heard about this free Amex Platinum card for military service members. Where can I go to learn more about this?
Great question, Jamie. I've got the Ultimate Military Credit Cards course at militarymoneymanual.com/UMC3. It's a 100% free email-based course, and I explain exactly how to verify your eligibility for credit card annual fee waivers with the Military Lending Act, or MLA, and the Service Members Civil Relief Act, or SCRA. The Ultimate Military Credit Cards course is a beginner's guide to travel hacking and opening up your first annual fee-waived credit card while you or your spouse serves in the U.S. military. There's no spam, no fluff, and the only emails you'll get from me are related to military credit cards. You can unsubscribe at any time, and there's zero cost to you to sign up. You can sign up right now for free at militarymoneymanual.com/UMC3. Again, militarymoneymanual.com/uniform Mike Charlie 3.
And now back to the show. Okay, number 7, no limit on spending on health or education. So things like a personal trainer or courses or events. I think sometimes people, and I think nowadays maybe courses are a little bit hokey online sometimes. There's a lot of good ones out there like ours, but sometimes you never know who you're going to get. But if you spend $27 on a course and your return on investment is thousands of dollars over your lifetime, then that's probably worth it. A personal trainer, if you're actually going to use it, or some workout equipment or something that you're actually going to use, spend it. It's going to be a big return on investment for your future you.
I mean, this is Ramit's rules, so I think it's a good one. I could see that if you're just getting started, like you definitely want some limits on your spending. But if you're further down and you've got the flexibility, I think one thing is that I do agree with here is like there should be certain areas of your life where you just don't have a limit on like how much you can spend on it. And it might be like things that you want to become. So let's say that you're not much of an athlete, but you're like, you know what, I want to become an athlete and the CrossFit gym is $280 a month, but you know what, like I'm going to do it. And if that's the motivation you need because you're like, I have to go or I'm wasting $280 a month, then do it and like become the person that you want to be, because you're probably not going to become an athlete spending $10 a month and going to Planet Fitness.
When you pick that area, it's going to be a sacrifice or a reduction in another area to cover that spending. So I would almost argue, no matter where you are in your journey, there's a way to prioritize certain categories. Like you said, maybe no limits, a little bit aggressive. But if that $280 a month CrossFit gym is important to you and it's going to make you a better parent and more successful at work because you're more focused and you're healthier and less sick days and things like that. Although CrossFit people tend to get injured a lot, maybe, I don't know. But had to throw that in there.
Ouch.
But I think there's a lot of benefit to having those categories and recognizing that I'm going to do this because it's important for me, but it means I'm going to eat out less, or I'm going to stop ordering from Amazon, or maybe I take a break from Amazon Prime and shop in person at Target, something like that.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, number 8, Ramit says, earn enough to work only with the people I respect and like. So in the military, that's not especially relevant, I think. But I think the broader point of, Naval Ravikant, I think, talks about this, where he says, like, I don't want to work with somebody for a minute that I wouldn't want to work with them for a lifetime. And I think that's just like, don't sell yourself short. Don't sacrifice your values for a short-term gain. Like if there's somebody that you just like cannot stand to be around and cannot stand to work with. In the military, sometimes we don't have the luxury of choosing who we work with. But if you do have the choice and you can kind of structure your workday, and maybe you minimize the amount of interaction that you have with that person because you recognize that they're just not that good for you.
For our audience, I'd almost flip this rule number 8 from Ramit to say, save enough so soon you'll only work with people you like and respect. So if you can get to financial independence or some kind of freedom or coast-fi amount, you can have flexibility in your job, or choosing to leave the military when the time is right for you because you don't like who you work with. So earning enough might be tough, but one day having the choice to work or not based on who you like or what you respect around the office or the team's culture is probably a little more applicable to us.
Yeah, I think I like that, Jamie, is flipping it around, especially like with the coast-fi thing. Like I've seen that now with some of my family members where I've introduced the concept of financial independence and especially coast-fi to them, where they recognize that, hey, maybe they're in a job, maybe they're in a city that they don't necessarily want to be in forever, but they're making a lot of money. And so they can really get themselves ahead financially. And the idea of coast-fi, where you're putting enough money into your retirement accounts that you no longer have to save for traditional retirement age. And maybe you can even drag that retirement age closer and closer to you, but then you can go work in a job that is actually fulfilling, even though it doesn't pay as much. I think that can really unlock, basically, it's just freedom, right? That's what money is. Money is you freedom. And so when you have more of it, you have more freedom. And so in the military, sometimes that's hard to recognize because we have long contracts and sometimes we don't make that much. But even if you're a young enlisted and you're only going to do 4 years, earn your GI Bill, get out and go to school, you could leave with tens of thousands of dollars saved. And that's going to make your time in college or getting ready to find another job after the military that much easier and give you that much more freedom that, yeah, you can choose to work only with people that you respect and like. Okay, number 9 on Ramit's list, prioritize time outside the spreadsheet. Ooh, I feel attacked by that one, Jamie. I love my spreadsheets. And I know some of our listeners do too. I get reader questions all the time on Instagram and via email like, hey, can you send me a spreadsheet so I can track my credit card benefits? Hey, can you send me a spreadsheet? And yeah, spreadsheets are great. You know, it's nice to see the number get bigger and to see the graph go up and to the right. That's not where life is lived. Life is lived outside the spreadsheets. And I think you and me both, Jamie, have been really good about prioritizing family and friends and experiences, you know, paddle boarding, time on the water, especially living in Hawaii. You got to get out there. You got to just soak up that salt and that sun. And that's what it's all about. But I will say that you got to spend a little bit of time in the spreadsheet so that you can get to the point where you can comfortably go do those things. At least for me, I know a lot of people don't need that. They can just live life completely unplanned, but that's not my style.
I almost want to say nothing about this one because I hate it so much. However, I will. Prioritizing time outside the spreadsheet I can buy, but that doesn't mean you don't need to spend any time tracking your net worth, at least recognizing your expenses, or at some point in your journey, getting a baseline of here's how much we spend so we know here's how much we need to save for our future. So prioritize time outside the spreadsheet. If you're spending all your free time in the spreadsheet, that's probably unhealthy, and no comment on whether I've ever had that problem.
I will say that if you're not as wealthy as you think you should be and you haven't spent any time in the spreadsheet, start spending some time in the spreadsheets, and then you'll understand why you're not quite as wealthy as you think you should be. And maybe you can start building a budget, building a plan, building a conscious spending plan, building investment strategy that will get you to that level of wealth that you feel like you should be at.
What I would say, I guess, on this one is if you could spend, say, an hour or 4 hours over the next month learning about low-cost, automatic, diversified, simple investment strategy like you wrote about in the book, Spencer, the Military Money Manual book, that time is going to pay dividends for you in the future. And so you might need to do some spreadsheeting to figure out what that looks like. But if it's a difference of should I spend an hour playing Fortnite or spend an hour reading about Boglehead's forum of how to invest easily on my own in Vanguard and save hundreds of thousands of dollars over my lifetime in fees, then you should probably prioritize the spreadsheet a little bit temporarily, but it's got to be balanced and healthy. You know, we were talking to one of our friends, and he'll probably hear this episode, so he'll get a good laugh out of this, but talking about updating his net worth or checking his Vanguard account daily, like, okay, that's probably too much. So balance it out a little bit.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that sometimes where it's like, oh, the number got bigger. And then if I like check the market, I'm like, the market went down. I'm not going to check today. And then it's like, oh, market's up. I'm going to check. And it's like back to the same number it was a month ago. And it's like, okay, is this healthy? Is this serving you? Like, do you have any control over this? No. So stop checking it. It's the same thing with the news, right? You have no control over it. Stop checking it. Focus on what you can control. Stay in your lane. And yeah, prioritize time outside the spreadsheet. I think that's a good one, Ramit. I think that's a good one. Okay, number 10. This is his last one. And he says, marry the right person. Wow. I have some thoughts on this one, Jamie.
This is deep and is going to get away from a money podcast pretty quickly. This is challenging, but I think statistically speaking, people who are married tend to have a higher net worth and higher growth because they're working together towards a goal. But also half of Americans or whatever the number is end up getting divorced. So this is probably, file this away, and easier said than done. What I would advocate for is that if you aren't married yet or you're thinking about getting married, talk about money, talk about goals, talk about future. It would not be great for you to find out after you've been married for 40 years that your spouse wants to work till they're 75 and die at work and you want to stop working at 35.
Yeah, it's a good rule, right? Like you definitely need to marry the right person, but how to do it in practice, I actually have almost zero practical advice because I feel like so much of it is luck. And that sucks because how do you advise someone like, oh, just be more lucky? It just doesn't work, right? I mean, now granted, what is the saying? Luck is where preparation meets opportunity. But other than like working on yourself and like bringing your best self so that when you meet the right person, you are ready to get married. So much of it is just luck, right? And it's just meeting the right person at the right time. And I mean, there's lots of red flags that you can look for. There's lots of things that you can say, I don't want to marry that type of person. But to find the person that you can grow older with, that you can continue to be with, that Arthur C. Brooks just wrote a book with Oprah Winfrey called Build a Life You Want. And in it, he talks about how in a marriage, you want to get to the point of companionable friendship where like your best friend in the whole world is your spouse. And I see so many relationships where they're not even at the 10-year, 15, 20-year mark yet. And their best friend is certainly not their spouse. And it's sad, right? But yeah, marrying the right person. I 100% agree. I think like so much of your life satisfaction, your life happiness does come from marrying the right person. But I almost don't see how that's a money rule other than, I mean, like it's going to materially impact your money if you marry the wrong person and if you marry the right person, right? Like by marrying the right person, you're probably going to be much more financially successful than marrying the wrong person. I will say one practical tip is in the military, there's a big push to get married and to get married young and to get married quickly. And there's financial incentives for it. Right? Like as an economics major, you can't argue the fact that if you're a young enlisted, how do you get out of the dorms? You get married. How do you get BAH? You get married. How do you get more BAH? Right? You get married. So there's definitely an incentive there. And people don't ignore incentives. People respond to incentives. But I would say that, and I don't know how to fix it. I don't have a prescription other than go slow. Like you don't have to get married in your 20s. And you don't have to get married to the first person you meet. And you certainly don't have to get married in tech school. And it can be challenging. It can be very lonely and it can be very scary when you're first joining the military. But yeah, you don't have to marry the stripper. And that's working right off of the whatever army post that you're stationed at. It's a big world out there.
Not only do you not have to, I'd almost venture to say you really shouldn't. However, I think the point here and what I can really get behind is that money is a huge part of relationships. So if you're dating someone that doesn't like to talk about money, or there's a bunch of red flags about how their parents or their family of origin handled money or didn't talk about money, or they spend and don't care how much credit card debt they're going into, then I'm not saying that person can't recover from that and can't be introduced to a better way of handling money, but you got to be careful with that. If you have someone that has poor financial habits, they will likely carry those with them into marriage, except for an intervention of some kind. And it's like dating someone and thinking that you're going to lose weight before the wedding. Like you're probably not. That's just where you're at. So just be careful with it. Like Spencer said, marrying the right person, easier said than done. But again, Ramit Sethi has millions of fans, way more money than us. And Spencer and I both got married in our 20s. So I don't know. What do we know about this?
What do we know exactly? And that's why it all comes back to luck, I think. So just to hit it one more time, Ramit Sethi's 10 money rules. He says, always have 1 year of emergency fund in cash, save 10%, invest 20% of your gross annual income. Number 3, be able to pay in full for large expenses like a wedding, dream honeymoon, or house before spending the money. Number 4, never question spending money on books, appetizers, health, or donating to a friend's charity. Number 5, business class is mandatory on all flights over 4 hours. Number 6, buy the best and keep it for as long as possible. Number 7, no limit on spending for health or education. Number 8, earn enough to work only with people I respect and like. Number 9, prioritize time outside the spreadsheet. And number 10, marry the right person. Jimmy, I will say that we did a recent podcast episode on the financial habits, 3 financial habits of highly successful or great marriages. So I recommend people go check that one out. It'll be released within a week either before this episode or after. So just kind of look in your podcast player of choice for that episode. And I think you'll get a lot of value out of that one. Yeah. So some super interesting money rules, definitely different strokes for different folks. But I like that Ramit puts it out there and sparks some conversation. So, listener, what are your money rules? Are there 10? Are there 5? Is there 1, 2? Anything that is just a non-negotiable for you that you commit to and you work towards, whether it's having an emergency fund, always treating yourself to a lie flat seat if you're going to fly over 5 hours, 4 hours, whatever it is. You can reach out, let us know, Instagram at Military Money Manual or email podcast@militarymoneymanual.com. And we'll catch you in the next episode of the Military Money Manual podcast.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Military Money Manual podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps others find the show, and we really appreciate it. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
The views and opinions presented here are those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views of the DoD or its components. Reference to any commercial products or services does not constitute DoD endorsement of those products or services.